Welcome to SoBo Radio. We're bringing you booze, reviews, and more. Today we're bringing you a lot more. I'm Mike,
And I'm Jake.
and today we're going to get started. Jake's got a little bit to talk about Governor DeSantis down there in Florida and what he's doing for the breweries down there. So, Jake, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I would love to. And that's actually a perfect way to word it. What he's doing for the breweries down here, which is absolutely nothing. So as most people know, like the Florida Brewers Guild, they put out a message last week, 2 weeks ago-ish, saying that we were going to lose like 100 breweries if DeSantis didn't do something about it. Well, he still hasn't done something about it. All he's done is say, like, we're going to take a scientific approach to figuring this out. I don't know what that means when we're talking about beer.
No.
But like
When you're not
that doesn't
brewing.
help us at all. So what he did was decide that his buddy B Shares, who's like the Florida business guy or whatever, he's going to go around and start talking to all these breweries and figuring out what's going on. Well, it's like, I get that you're busy, but like, what is more important to you right now than helping out some of these breweries stay in business? And the answer came this week when we figured out that he was actually Mr. DeSantis, had traveled halfway across the state to go to a rocket launch. Come on, man.
My God, who the hell cares?
It's ridiculous. It's like, are you kidding? Did you at least stop by a couple breweries on your way to kind of talk about what's going on and to just pass it off to this guy B Shares, who, like, to be fair, small business guy, it seems like he might do a good job, but like, at the same time, you've slept on this for so long, and I hate to be the dude to say that, it seems like we might be at the point of no return. There's other scientists, Harvard people, whatever, they're smarter than me, saying that we should be going into a full lockdown. Well, if we go into full lockdown, that means that everything's closed, and that means for a couple weeks, those breweries are going to have to survive, and they already have a disadvantage of not having income over those last couple months. So they're most likely not going to make it. So did this thing go on too far? And like, what is up with you, dude? Like, it's just figure something out. So they're talking about possibly making it so they don't have to pay their licenses this year,
Oh, they're like,
which will save
really?
them each like $2,000 a year, which is a
Wow.
decent start in the right direction. But at the same time, Mr.
Are
DeSantis,
you delusional? Do you suffer from a mental illness?
what is going on, man? Just figure it out, put something together. That's kind of the only update we've had in Florida, is that you're going to assign someone else to look at it, and that you're going to go look at rockets launch into the air. Anyway, kicking it back over to Mike to kind of talk about what's going on with Cuomo.
Yeah, no, I mean, before we get into Cuomo, I like to kind of go off that a little bit and talk in terms of like total lockdown. So up here in New York, like we had a total lockdown at the beginning of this. We had 700 cases or 700 deaths for like a week or two. I don't know exactly, but so they shut us down. They shut down businesses. They shut down everything else, and they really, Cuomo tried to get a hand over it. And, he did what needed to be done at the time. And then he went to curbside, and a lot of businesses stayed closed after that, and big stores opened up. And then finally they were allowed to reopen with the precautions of masks, with precautions of safe, social distancing, wiping down and sanitizing your facilities and stuff like that. So, at the first it was kind of everybody working back into it. And then when he came out and said that food wasn't substantial, and Cuomo came out and said that, I was kind of like, chicken wings aren't substantial enough. That's wild. And we had our rant this week on it earlier. And to my point on that was, a brewery's not a bar staying open till 2 a.m. or bars, even though, if you're going to do anything like restrict their hours or the capacity in the bar, you can do certain things without shutting them down completely. That's for everywhere. And to that, I also say is like all these other small businesses are open and they don't sell alcohol, and I get that. But as long as everybody's following the safety precautions and the rules set in place for the virus, then, what's the deal? Like, why can't a brewery or bar be open? They're still selling a product just like the clothing store down the street or, the bakery, the delis, like they're still doing the same thing. So what's the difference? As long as they're following the rules, there really shouldn't be restriction on what they're eating in my eyes. And the thing about it is you get a couple bad eggs that ruin it for the rest of everybody else. And I think that's tough because you go after the innocent people instead of the people that are messing up. And the people that are messing up, that's on them. And they're also giving everybody else a bad rap because they're doing something stupid. Like we had in the Hamptons, the chain smokers threw a festival based or a concert, and like Cuomo came on TV. He's like, I don't even know how the promoter got the permits. Like the bad promoter's in trouble, but we're going to also find out how they got passed on that. And the thing about it to me was like, all right, we just shouldn't have gatherings that big at this point in time. It's just, that's what it is. You know, it sucks. It just is what it is. We're in a world health crisis. And to me in general, it's a lot of just follow the rules. You know, we're all in this together and we got to come out. And the chain smokers then came out saying like, oh, that was a bad angle for us because we were following CDC guidelines. And you're kind of like, okay, but you had a concert with hundreds of people there. And the same thing happened in California on a beach. There was like a church gathering and there had to be hundreds of people. The beach was packed. And you kind of look at that as those are isolated situations. But in my eyes too, like these healthcare workers just coming off everything that happened are like, hey guys, can you just give us a break? Like we were in there for a long time doing what we had to do and they did it. And, you know, I gave a lot of respect to those people quarantining from their families, putting themselves on the front line, potentially getting the virus. And, you know, now they're asking for us to kind of like just cool it down for a minute. They're saying a vaccine's close, you know, December. I mean, yeah, it seems like a far time away, but in the long run, it's pretty close. So to all of that is like these concerts and all these things and people out and mass gatherings. To me, you go to the hospital with COVID and you got to be like, get a hospital bed. You shouldn't get a hospital bed compared to like an essential worker that's out there and has to go to work. And I know it's not the case, but it's the same thing with the businesses. You know, these businesses, or at least they're following the rules. And if they're following the rules, why would you shut them down? You know? And you're going to just kill people. You're going to take away everything they have just because they're selling no food or something that's not substantial enough to be worthy enough in the eyes of Governor Cuomo as food. And to me, it's just such a stupid thing because it's a product at the end of the day. And all the other businesses are open. So why can't we let these guys be open? You know, no one's really checking in on other businesses like they are the breweries, bars, restaurants, because of, I know they serve food and it's a more high traffic area and stuff like that, or high traffic places. And at the end of the day, just put people, if you want a solution, put people on the street and go find the bad eggs. Don't take away from everybody else that's following the rules. You know, don't just shut down businesses. Throw somebody on the main streets of highly populated areas and tell them to walk Main Street. Say if they're following rules, then you give them a summons or you give them a ticket. They don't follow that and they don't pay your ticket, then you go in and you shut them down. And to me, that's the best solution you have is you got to treat everything very isolated right now because there are a lot of people that are listening and really doing what they can to help and to listen and follow the guidelines. And there's few people that aren't. And those are the people that we need to go after, not the people that are listening. And, you know, you're just taking away small businesses and it's kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, to build off of that, when we're talking about substantial foods, one of the things I forgot to cover earlier is that in Florida, beer is considered a substantial food under certain laws. That's the reason why we can't have dogs in the restaurants. So, really? Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to say, well, beer's, you know, well, a brewery can't stay open because they're not serving a substantial product when you also have laws that say that beer is a substantial food.
Congratulations. You played yourself.
It doesn't make any sense. It's like, I don't get how you could be so one-sided on one thing. And then, so it blows my mind. Yeah, I don't know. But like you said, it's a shame that they take away from all these small businesses, and we get it. Like, you're concerned and we're also concerned. Like, it's also our lives at stake here. We're going to wear a mask, and I get that you're concerned because it's technically a bar, and at bars, people tend to get a little sloppy. And they talk in each other's faces. Well, maybe we set a drink cap or something like that. Maybe we say you can have X amount of drinks in the bar and then you can pick them up and take them home. Something. Just get people inside the building. That's all we need.
There's more solutions than they're coming out with. And in my eyes, it's like, come out with solutions. Don't just shut stuff down. Don't take away from these people that are trying to put food on their table and keep employees at work. I know a lot of people had the PPP loan and that helped a lot of people, but now we're getting off that. Unemployment's getting cut, which, you know, it is what it is. And they're coming out with another check. And all right, so let's let the economy go. Let's let people work until we see something that's really bad, or we have areas that are highly infected areas. I mean, you know, New York's very low right now. As long as everybody's following the guidelines and the precautions that need to be taken, I think that you just treat it case to case at the moment. And then if the area becomes highly infected, then you got to shut it down or you go to curbside. But I think there's multiple steps they can take before they just shut down something. And it's going to be more work, but at the end of the day, like, don't just classify people, because you're going to kill local economies. You're going to kill bars and main streets. You're going to take away from a lot. And, to me, there's just other steps that can be taken before we go to full lockdown at this moment in time, at least in New York, I should say. In Florida, I know, like, South Florida is getting hit pretty hard by this virus, and it's not what it was here in New York, but it's still something to be concerned about, I think. I don't know. It's a crazy time. We haven't gone through something like this in 100 years.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a crazy time, and I know, like you said, there should be precautions that are in place for when we are in what's called like the red zone, where our numbers are insane, and when we're just dealing with small cases. And I think one of the places that Florida dropped the ball is that while we were in that state where we weren't exactly in the red zone and we didn't have many cases, we closed everything down. And it didn't do anything because our numbers skyrocketed anyway. So was it worth losing all of that economy growth for those couple of months? Maybe not, and I guess it's sort of a trial and error type of situation, but at the same time, if we're the ones that just caught that first wave of this whole trial and error system, it's really not going to be good for our local economy. So maybe instead of just doing what everyone else is doing and saying like, all right, this is what needs to happen now, this is what happens now, we're in a different situation. Let's figure out how we handle this situation that we're in, not how New York handled their situation, not how California is handling their situation, but what's going on in Florida right now and what's going to be the best so that we can keep as many businesses as physically possible on the other side of this thing without losing everybody.
So, Jake, I got a question for you, right? We on D4 Sports the other day talked about sports and opening back up and everything like that. And there's alcohol sales when it comes to that. So I know some people are going to get hurt in that, in terms of like bigger companies such as the big American lagers and stuff like that. And there's also small town craft breweries in those stadiums as well, and it's going to hurt them. And one of my questions was, what do you do in terms of sports? And I know it's a huge pastime and people love it, and I miss sports too. I'm not going to say I don't. But at the end of the day, like, do you think they're considered essential?
I don't think they're considered essential. First, let me field the whole beer thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
When it comes to those big breweries, those national beer brands, they're going to be fine. They've been crushing it for this past years, and their numbers have been insane since COVID started.
The numbers went up.
Not to mention, that's another reason why breweries are at such a deficit going into this, is because hard seltzer has just crushed them over the last couple of years.
Yes.
Stealing a ton of sales. So yeah, sports is going to have an impact on what they're doing revenue wise, even for some local breweries that have managed to find their way into the stadiums. At the same time, I do think, even though it's not an essential business, that sports could be allowed if you figure out how you're going to do it. I don't think you can do it with the original platform. I think there's certain sports like the UFC and like the NHL who have kind of figured out how they're going to do things in light of COVID, with keeping fans away and making it shorter, and changing their whole structure, which actually is a lot more fun. It changes the whole system up. Even though we can't see people at the actual game, there's less atmosphere. It switches things up at home. But like, if the NFL just does what they normally do and just keep playing games in stadiums, you're not going to be able to stop tailgating. You're not going to be able to stop people from Buffalo from breaking tables. Like, there's going to be tailgating either way. And yeah, maybe sports will have an impact on people gathering in the home, which is a big spot for COVID to begin with. But at least it's not people gathering at a stadium. So if you can control how people are going to act outside of a stadium, then yeah, go for sports. But if you really just have a baseline of what you want to do with your season and you don't really have any things implemented that are going to work, then don't do it. Don't do it unless you have fine line details like UFC had with their Fight Island, where there's no one in there at all.
Now, where do you sit with college sports? And there's a reason I'm bringing this into it, but what do you think with the NCAA?
College sports, I say drop them. I know that's a hot take, but like, also, the reason why we have sports is essentially as a way to control and entertain the masses. We desperately need some entertainment right now. There's nothing coming out on TV. At least give us some sports. College sports, it doesn't quite fit that argument, because if you're going to have college sports, then why don't we have college campuses open up? Because campuses are more important than the sports. Education should be way more important than the sports. If we can't have education, then we don't deserve to have the sports as well. If anything, move some of those players to their major leagues if that's what you feel like you need to do, but don't start college sports.
See, I kind of agree with you. And on terms of professional sports, they get represented by unions. They get paid big time money to do this, and they get to make decisions. And these people can go, these professional athletes can go, and if they needed to, they could rent a studio apartment and they could live there, stay away from their families, quarantine, and they could risk that. College sports, my thing is, okay, you're going to bring all these students back, and we're going to expect after we get them from wherever they're coming from, all over the country, to come back to campus, that once they're done with practice, they're going to go back to their dorm rooms, stay there, do their homework, and then go back to practice. In my eyes, being in the generation straight, like 2 years out of college, how are you going to keep a bunch of 18 to 24-year-olds inside while they're hanging out with their friends at college? You know, they're going to be going out, they're going to be going to bars, they're going to be doing things. And the other thing you look at is other viruses and diseases in college campuses. And one thing you look at is like mono, the flu, and how quick they spread in dorms. Now imagine what this is going to do in a dorm. And if it tears it up, you're going to take out like 25% of a college population. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I would agree. I mean, it takes one college athlete to have it for that whole entire league to go down.
Yeah. And the other thing is, the minute you lose, like, let's say football, a lot of D1 football programs lose money anyways. But the minute, like, your backups and they're dropping roster sizes and everything, and if people get sick, like, you're going to have asterisks on the season because you're going to be playing backups on backups, or you're going to lose whole teams and you're going to mess up the season. But on top of that, this is what my dad asked one of the high school coaches that came in and talked with him, because they were talking about high school football season and everything of that nature. And he said to the coach, he's like, "What's your number?" And the coach is like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "What's your number?" And he's like, "I don't understand what you're saying." He goes, "What's your number that potentially a kid could die in high school from the virus because they don't know they had an autoimmune disease, or they have diabetes, or they have asthma, or," and you know, that for me, that kind of sits with college as well. And you have to be responsible for your students. At the end of the day, they're student athletes. They go to get an education. They're not there to play sports. And I really believe that some campuses are looking at money, and they're putting money over their kids' well-being and their students' well-being. And to me, I just don't think that you're going to have the control that they think they're going to have. And they're making kids sign health waivers if they get it that they're not responsible for it. And to me, it's absurd, because colleges have a platform to teach online. And the thing that I think is going to happen with college, if it stays online, is people are going to realize that the price of a college education is way too expensive. And I think colleges are getting nervous. And I think that the amount of money and greed that's driving these campuses to play Division I sports, yeah, it's going to mess up recruiting classes, and it's going to tear some stuff apart in that sense. But, you know, you got to adjust. At the end of the day, we're in a pandemic, a world health crisis, and it's just not essential. And the thing for me is, once these kids take out teams, let's say 3 of them have to go to the hospital and be in ICU beds. Not that they would, but let's say now we're taking up beds from essential workers like tradesmen or post office or linesmen. And if they get sick, they can't go to the hospital. They got to wait because we got it packed with 20 kids from this school that just got it and got a bad adverse reaction to it or something like that. And to me, like, it's just, we got to really focus on what drives our society, you know. And all these mass gatherings, it's kind of like a slap in the face to the healthcare workers. I think they've been busting their ass for the last 4 months and staying away from their families and working crazy hours just to make sure that we all make it through this. And now we're kind of like, I don't listen to them, you know. And to me, it's pretty crazy. And, you know, it's just a tough situation. And it's going to be a lot of, like, trial and error, like you said earlier. But at the end of the day, it's tough. But I just believe that student athletes, you should just be like, all right, we're not going to go to college, or we're not going to go to campus right now. And they're saying they might have a vaccine in December. They have Dr. Fauci said he's cautiously optimistic about having a vaccine. So, you know what, if you got to stick it out for a couple more months and don't put anybody at risk, I think that's the way to go. And, you know, it ties back to the businesses. You got to keep businesses open, because you'll bankrupt people and you will have an influx on the welfare programs. So, you know, you got to kind of look at it like that and be like, all right, we got to keep these people open, but they have to take the precautions. And a lot of businesses are taking the precautions. And just like the bars, just like the breweries, It's just something that we have to go case by case and determine what's the worst outcome if we don't open certain things or we restrict certain things. And those businesses, yeah, if it gets bad, okay, we got to make a call, but take the steps to go down. Don't just shut it down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the bigger problems is, I mean, obviously the American education system when it comes to college is just ridiculous when it comes to financing to begin with. Like we all know it's jacked up on price, and for some reason we all agree to pay it.
We all go.
But the other side of it is that people have started like soliciting people to have their own point of view on COVID now. So I'm sure all those colleges have their own scientists working on things saying, yeah, you can have kids go. And that's just not how it should be. Like Dr. Fauci, we picked him to be in charge. You can't just overstep that because you need some money to come in, which I know is a little counterintuitive to what we're saying about breweries. But if you're a college, that's a totally different. There's a big difference between playing in a sport where you physically touch each other and going to a brewery to pick up a beer.
Well, I think a brewery is more like the business side of it. But as a college, you have to look at the well-being of your students, and you're responsible for these kids.
That's exactly it. And the colleges, they're going to be fine. They're not going to go out of business. I mean, maybe some of them if you're really bad with financing, but like, I know I gave you guys a ton of money. So did you spend it already? No, you're going to be fine.
Schools got federal funding to give out to kids that were claimed as dependents. They were given money to dole out to them for financial aid reasons. And like I know our college didn't give out all the money they were given. So, I don't know if they plan on it, they might. But at the same time, like it's not a business that's making $100,000 a year, $100,000, or the owner's making let's say $50,000 a year, and they're bringing in $300,000 in revenue. These are schools that are making massive amount of money, and they're going to get aid to stay open, and they're going to have alumni backing them, and they're going to have resources to pull on where these small businesses don't.
And not only that, like if you're a college, you can afford to have classes online. It's something that you can do.
Yes.
There's no excuse for you not to be able to. If
100%.
you're a brewery, you can't do that online. No. You're a physical location. You have to brew in a building and you sell to your people from that building because there's structured laws about, delivering beer from a brewery directly to a place. There's distribution laws. It's not something you can do. So if you're a college and you have the option to go onto campus when really it doesn't need to be done, that's not essential. So like what gives you the right to actually do that when there's other businesses struggling?
I also think there's a difference between professionals and amateurs, just like sports.
Well, that's why they get paid to make the big bucks, man.
Exactly. And these breweries, and like I said, the NFL, you guys do what you want to do because you're not going to have fans, but those people are getting paid, and they are getting paid to make decisions that they're going to make. And they have, and at the end of the day, look at the breweries. They're professionals, and they have to stay open to keep this going. But colleges have other sources of income. And the other thing to me is like, all right, when we were in school, we already had hybrid classes. We had all online classes. Like there's a platform to do this. Yes, it sucks. We're not going to see Alabama, we're not going to watch Notre Dame, and we're not going to see these big schools play football. And, it sucks. But at the end of the day, we should be looking out for the welfare of the students. And that's what I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's not just football. It's every sport.
Every sport.
It's not like we're going after one sport in particular. No. I mean, football is definitely the most
it's just, to me, it's got a big roster. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I would agree. And it's not fair to make those kids play just because we want something to watch.
And the other thing is you bring all these kids back to school. Like you said, I didn't even think about that. Tailgating. How are you going to stop that? You're going to bring all these kids back to school. The kids living off campus, they're going to tell their buddies to come over. They're going to watch football. They're going to play beer die. They're going to play beer pong. They're going to watch the game. And they might not go to the parking lot, but you're going to have streets that are shut down at these big schools. They're going to be like, yeah, no, we're still. Yeah.
You're going to have houses packed with people.
Exactly. So it's going to be interesting. And I didn't even think about what you said about tailgating. And I think that actually really comes into play here with us. That's going to be tough to control. And the minute that one kid has it that does like, he's either like, fuck it, I don't care, or he just doesn't know about it, your school's going to get devastated, and you're going to be that school that's got a major COVID outbreak. You know what I mean?
Oh, and here's one of the biggest dangers of that is if you go on and you have college sports and people tailgate and people party. Well, not to call out things like Barstool and Total Frat Move, but like that's what they base their business off of. If those parties are going on, that stuff's going to be shared, and it's not going to be frowned upon for doing it. It's going to be just another new video that social media absorbs, and it's going to keep spreading, and it's going to help increase the rate of COVID spread. It's not going to help decrease it at all. It's just going to make it. It's kind of going to make us forget almost, because we're going to be so entertained by what's going on at these parties that we're not actually going to think about.
And
the
you're
fact
going to
that
have
those
the
people should be
argument
wearing
that
masks.
kids our age don't suffer as much as other age groups and stuff like that. And I get that. But it's the interaction that you might have with the community. And some of these professors, like, what are you going to do if one of your professors gets sick from a kid that didn't know he had it and came in, or a kid that was out tailgating and comes to class on Monday and that professor gets sick and they go to the hospital? And to me, it's just like, all right, you have the resources, take the steps you need, listen to the professionals, and, see what happens. But in my eyes, it's just not worth it when you have the platforms to do it otherwise and do it remotely. It's gonna be an interesting time to see what plays out here in the next couple of weeks.
I think we're going to fumble a lot. And one of the weirdest things about this is that it's not what I think the world expected to hit us. It's more of a primitive type obstacle that we have in a very modern age. And I don't think it's how anyone thought 2020 would shape up, that we would get totally derailed on our global economy. Not only that, but just on kind of everything. I mean, technology is doing fine, but everything else has been totally derailed in the world. And it's by something that we probably should have been smart enough to see coming. And because naturally as humans, we're a little bit, arrogant. We didn't, and we weren't prepared, and it caught us with our pants down, and that's what happened.
I just think you look at it in terms of, we didn't get a draft notice. You know what I mean? Okay. And there's generations before us that did. And if the country's asking us not to play sports, or if the country's asking us to take precautions in our businesses daily, or sanitize, social distance, face coverings, we should be able to do that. And like I said, I think a lot of small businesses are doing it because they don't want to be labeled as the place that gets COVID. And that's in terms of retailers, that's in terms of breweries, that's in terms of bars, that's in terms of a lot of places. And you don't want to get linked back to being that place. But at the same time, we got to do our civic duty, you know what I mean? And if that's what it takes to get this country back on the right step, then, we got to wear a mask. We got to social distance. We got to give up sports for a couple months. And, we'll get it back, but we got to get there before we can get it back. You know what I mean?
No, I agree. And not to go on a little rant here, but these people who are anti-maskers, I know we have a huge problem with it in Florida. Dude, just wear a mask. Just pop it on. There's people working in the medical field who have to do 13-hour shifts wearing a mask.
Yes.
You can put a mask on for a half hour while you go to Walmart and buy yourself a rack of ribs or whatever you're doing, case of Bud Light. Just put it on, take it off, and don't fuss about it. And don't pretend that you know so much about this whole thing that you are entitled to not wear a mask, because you don't. It's just, that's how it is. We have these rules. We're all pretending that this is life as normal now, because it is. And you just have to partake in that.
And I think you look at it too, like here in New York, I've talked to health professionals that went through for the last, the 4 months that it was bad, 2 months that it was bad. And now they're like, hey, listen, it's calmed down. There's not an influx on the healthcare system, but at the same time, we still have to take the precautions because we can't get there again. And I don't think we'd ever get back to that number that New York was at, just because we know enough now and we know how to do things. But I do believe that if you don't listen and we don't follow the rules and regulations, that it will get bad again. And the thing is, are we just going to keep letting it get bad and keep getting worse? Or are we going to actually just try to stop it, try to figure it out, deal with it for a little bit, and then just get over it? And once we get that vaccine, and I think that's what we have to wait for.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm essentially looking at it as 2020 is pretty much canceled. It's a leap year. We're just going to leap right over. We're going to forget it happened, leave it in the past.
And you know what? You go get a craft brew, you go down, pick it up, go sit there for a minute, social distance. You get another 6-pack to come home with. You sit on the couch, you watch some reruns, you turn on Netflix. There's a lot of shit on Netflix, and that's how you deal with it. You don't go out and gather in 100 people crowds, and you don't go out and look at all the people that had to cancel weddings. Look at all the people that had to cancel big events. Look at the people that can't have funerals. Okay, you can't have a funeral, but we're going to bring back sports. That's insane. Now you can have funerals, but at the same time, there's a point in time that you could not have a funeral. So, and we're already talking about sports. That's crazy. You know what I mean?
Playoffs. Yeah, no, it's just ridiculous. And like,
Yes.
I don't know. At least in Florida, I feel like the way we structured things to handle this was not good. Um, I don't think DeSantis had a good handle on this. I'm sure you're a great dude, but I feel like you put yourself before your state in this situation, which is a real bummer because we elected you to put your state before yourself. And we asked you for help a couple of times here, and instead of helping out the small businesses, you immediately targeted the big businesses like Disney and Universal and SeaWorld, who, let's be honest, I love Disney, annual pass holder myself. They don't need to be open as much as a brewery does on a day-to-day basis. So
They're going to lose money. But at the end of the day, like, I have a problem with that in terms of letting these big organizations stay open, but we're going to put sanctions and not sanctions, but we're going to put rules on the small businesses and we're going to kill them. But, you know, the multi-billion-dollar companies get to stay open. That's crazy. That's insane.
I mean, you think about even if you're Disney World and you're operating at 25% capacity or whatever, you still have people sitting on the same carts going in and off, and like you can clean it, I guess, but like also, what are you using to clean it? How much do those employees care that they are cleaning it before the next person shows up? And what is it actually doing, you know?
Here's the other thing. People are stupid, okay? People are dumb. And I hate to say it like that, but like we have dumb people that if it's open, they're going. And if we put it on the people, we're going to get infected 10 times faster. And it's going to come back 10 times faster. And to me, it's just like you just said, how many people are actually being responsible in their job duties when it comes to cleaning, when it comes to wiping things down and looking out for the well-being of customers. And those big corporations, I think, are going to be a lot less careful than the smaller businesses because those small businesses have to protect their reputation or else they go bankrupt because somebody's like, oh, that's disgusting. We don't like you. And like, think about how much a review on Google or Yahoo or Yelp affects a small business compared to what it would do to a billion-dollar company. And, you know, let's level the playing field. Just because they make that much money, it doesn't make their way of life any more important than the small brewer, the small business owner, the small bar owner, the retailers on the main streets. So level the playing field. Make it equal for everybody. If you're going to open it for everybody. If you're going to shut it or you're going to make restrictions, give the restrictions to everybody, you know?
No, I
Yeah.
agree. And like, you're dead on, as much as we all hate to admit it. Humans are stupid. Florida, particularly in the crosshairs for a lot of shit.
And there seems to be no sign of
We don't we don't do things well. And I've worked at Disney. I know that most people do not care. And even just because there's a pandemic, it's not going to make them care more. It might make them care more about keeping themselves safe. But you, maybe not.
I can't disagree with you, man. It's just a wild time, and it's a time that, you know, we just got to be responsible, and it's time that we all have to work together to do this. And I know there's some other things going on, and the mass gatherings are tough, and you don't know what to do in certain situations, and certain political decisions I think are tough right now, just with everything else going on and what's going on in the world. And a lot of people think it's like political, and I don't think that each party in the U.S. is going at each other and arguing policies and all that. But at the end of the day, if it was straight politics and like that's how everybody's saying the virus is, why did it devastate Italy? Why did it devastate China? Why did it devastate all these other countries as well? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. And like, much like a hurricane, a virus doesn't take sides. A virus is nor Democratic or Republican. It's nor right or left. It is there to do one thing, and that's act on its own agenda and get people sick.
Yep.
And if you are someone who thinks that it's, well, this side said this and this, that's not the case. And I wish that our political system would get their shit together a little bit, and start to put things in order on what's actually needs to be done, instead of using it as leverage as like, all right, well, we'll do this, but then 2 years from now, we actually need you to do something for climate change. and we
Look
bounce
at
that back. And like,
schools, man.
don't get me wrong, I'm huge on climate change, but at the same time, this is not the time to be bringing other things into the negotiation.
No, and we had this conversation here the other night. Is when you're voting, like if we should be in a state of emergency, and I don't know if we are. I'm probably sure we are with the COVID and the pandemic. You shouldn't be able to wrap other political issues into this. We should vote on one thing. This is what we vote on. It's the yay or nay. If it's the $1,200 stimulus checks, vote on that. Don't put pork in this. Just make the calls for the people. You're there to protect the people of your country. Protect them and stop making political parties more important than the health of your citizens. And it's crazy. It's really crazy to see some of these politicians that go in and they come out millionaires and they don't have the same kinds of healthcare that we have. And they just dictate things, and it's crazy because you're putting lives over money and political agendas, and you shouldn't do that at this moment in time. You shouldn't.
I mean, I really don't think there's ever a good moment in time where you should be doing that. But yeah, I'd say that pretty much wraps things up. You got any ending notes?
No, not at the moment. As always, drink local and have a brew. Go get a brew and get a 6-pack. Hang out at the house, social distance, and wear your face mask.
Heck yeah! All right, guys, that's SoBo Radio. If you're in the Orlando area, make sure you go check out Hourglass this weekend. They're going to be releasing a bunch of new beers for their anniversary, so check that out. Florida, when it comes to letting people in the brewery to go have a drink, Mr. DeSantis, just do it, dude. Get over it with this. We all want to have things get back to normal, at least a little bit. But more importantly, we want to make sure that things can be normal when we come on the other side of this, which means keeping our brewery open. So at the same time, just same as last time. Figure it out, man. Anyway, thanks for tuning in to SoBo Radio. We hope to catch you next time. We hope that you stayed listening the whole time. As always, wear a mask, drink local, and stay safe out there.